Task-based language learning. NEP 2020 says teachers will be given more autonomy in choosing aspects of pedagogy so that they may teach in the manner they find most effective for the students in their classrooms. Teachers will be recognized for novel approaches to teaching that improve learning outcomes in their classroom. In this chapter, we will try and understand the concept of task-based language teaching (TBLT) approach to teaching, the main features of tasks, the criteria for identifying tasks, the steps in creating and implementing an integrated TBLT lesson, and the idea of task-based language assessment as a framework for assessing learners' performance in a TBLT classroom. Task-based language teaching. What is it? You don't learn to walk by following rules. You learn by doing and by falling over. This is a quote from Richard Branson. Before we begin, let's try out a task. You are with a group of colleagues and are planning to go out for lunch. Choose a restaurant, keeping in mind the choice of cuisine, dietary restrictions, price of food, and location. Share your choice with your colleagues. Discuss with them and arrive at a choice of restaurant. This is the language that you would use when you are with colleagues who are also your friends. Suppose your principal and a few other members of the staff were part of your group. Would the language you use be different? If so, in what ways and for what purposes? You can use a table to identify these. You can also identify which of the statements that are given characterize the features of a task that we just completed. You could mentally tick all those that are applicable. 1. Language is primarily used for meaning making. 2. The task is related to a real life situation. 3. It involves a two-way exchange of information. 4. The participants work towards achieving a common goal. 5. The task involves the use of abstract knowledge. 6. Participants engage in discussion and exchange of ideas. 7. There is an explicit focus on grammatical structures. 8. Many outcomes are possible, so participants must engage in negotiation. 9. The kind of language used changes depending on whom we are interacting with. TBLT, first use in India. What we have just looked at is using tasks in language education classrooms. This approach is called task-based language teaching, TBLT. It is not really a new approach to language teaching. One of the first experiments with TBLT began in India as early as 1979 when Dr. N.S. Prabhu introduced this approach in secondary classrooms. It is popularly known as the Bangalore Project. TBLT emerged from dissatisfaction with traditional methods of language teaching where the emphasis was on grammar and vocabulary. The central tenet of the Bangalore Project was that in language instruction, form can be acquired easily when the focus is on meaning. Kinds of tasks. Having looked at the criteria that distinguish a task and how we can convert an activity or exercise into a task, let us look at the kinds of tasks that we can use in our classrooms. Various typologies of task types have been proposed which can be used to modify textbook activities into more meaningful tasks for our learners. Willis, in her article 6 Types of Tasks for TBL, discusses the following. A. Listing and or brainstorming. Listing can include names of people, Places, things, actions, reasons for certain events or actions, feelings, day-to-day problems, steps to take in different situations, and the like. For example, in task 1, in pairs, learners agree on a list of 5 famous women who are inspirational, citing at least one reason for including each person. B. Ordering and sorting. Students can then rank the people in their list from most popular to least popular and discuss who is likely to remain popular and who is not. They present their list to another pair or class and justify their order. Another popular sequencing activity is to look at a set of pictures that have been jumbled up. The pictures must be sequenced properly so that they can tell a coherent story. Learners can work in pairs or groups to do so and can tell their stories to another pair or group. C. Matching. This can take the form of matching captions or text to pictures or titles or headlines to paragraphs or longer texts. For example, read the descriptions of 4 people or places and match them to appropriate pictures. Tell the partner or your class how you did this. Matching headlines and news pieces and explaining to a partner the cues in the text that help to identify the right headline is another popular exercise. One can even use this to help students to identify the main idea of a text or a paragraph. D. Comparing. Tasks involving comparison can be based on texts or pictures or places or events, etc. that are similar. Example, spot the differences. It would be interesting if these are woven around themes that learners are familiar with. Asking learners to compare their work with that of another pair or group could also be a comparison task. E. Problem solving. Our textbooks often include units on themes such as pollution, environment, relationships, and the likes. Writing or speaking tasks require the learners to find solutions to problems based on these themes, and they work through them individually or only superficially. Such tasks as writing letters of complaint or educating neighbors about the benefits of waste segregation could be made more meaningful by asking learners to work in pairs and think of various ways in which this can be done. For example, by asking them to list the advantages and disadvantages for doing so. To ensure greater interaction, they could decide on the most economical or innovative or eco-friendly solution. Reporting their decision to the class or another pair or group and deciding on the best solution could be the next steps. F. Storytelling or sharing experiences. These tasks in which learners recount their personal experiences and narrate stories are valuable because they provide learners with an opportunity to produce language in a more sustained manner. The advantage is that the topic is a familiar one and so the learner is encouraged to speak. These task types have been categorized as information gap, reasoning gap, and opinion gap activities by Prabhu. They include jigsaw tasks, problem-solving tasks, decision-making tasks, and opinion exchange tasks as given by Richards in 2006. Activity versus task. We often get confused between an activity and a task. The difference between the two is made clear by Professor Jack C. Richards, an experienced practitioner of TBLT. According to him, the term activity is more general and refers to any kind of purposeful classroom procedure that involves learners doing something that relates to the goals of the course. For example, singing songs, playing games, participating in debates, or group discussions. A task may be defined as having an outcome that is not linked to language learning alone, though learners may acquire the language as they carry out the task. Being relevant to learners' needs. involving a focus on meaning, requiring the use of communication strategies and interactional skills when two or more learners are involved, providing opportunities for reflection on language use. You can try and understand the differences better based on select criteria by imagining this in a tabular format. The first column will have features, second column will focus on activities, and the third column will focus on tasks. Each row will be focused on a particular feature. Let us go feature by feature. The first feature is that of goal. Activities introduce or practice specific language skills such as grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. They engage learners and make learning fun. They can be used as a warm-up or a lead-in to a task. Tasks for goals are focused on achieving a specific communicative outcome. They focus on using language in a meaningful context to solve a problem or complete a project. The second feature is that of structure. Activities are controlled with clear instructions and defined steps. They may not have a real-world context. Tasks, on the other hand, can be more open-ended, requiring negotiation and problem solving. Tasks often have a real-world context or simulate a real-world situation. The third feature is that of focus. Activities are focused on a specific language form or skill. Tasks, on the other hand, are focused on communication and using language functionally. The fourth feature is that of outcome. Activities may not have a specific product or outcome. Activities could be focused on building foundational skills. Tasks, on the other hand, have a very clear outcome or product. Example, role-played conversation, a written report, and so on. Lastly, if we look at the example feature, activities could include matching vocabulary words to pictures, completing a grammar worksheet, playing a language learning game, and so on. Tasks, on the other hand, would focus on role-playing a job interview, planning a vacation itinerary together, debating a current event, and so on. Here is an analogy to think of the differences. Think of activities as building blocks and tasks as a complete structure. Activity. Think of it as practicing scales of a song, maybe on an instrument. It helps to develop your musical skills. Task, on the other hand, is more like playing the entire song on an instrument, say a piano. You use your scales and other skills to create music with a purpose and improve your skills with musical scales in the process. Primarily, if I look at a key concept, activity is more general, refers to any kind of purposeful classroom procedure that involves learners doing something that relates to the goals of the course. On the other hand, task is something learners do, having an outcome which is not necessarily linked to language learning alone and is relevant to learners' needs and provides opportunities for reflection on language use. In short, activities are building blocks. They help to develop language skills. Tasks are where you put those language skills to use. They involve communication and achieve a specific goal. Both activities and tasks are valuable for language learning and they often complement each other. Teachers can use activities to prepare learners for tasks, and tasks can provide opportunities to practice and solidify language skills learned through activities.